NieR Automata was a game that wasn't played, but rather felt. Since it had sat in my library for years, I finally had the chance to sit through it after my breakup. And this game had unexpectedly become a teacher of silent grief and left me with a lesson through a lingering feeling. It didn't numb my feelings, rather it taught me how to sit with it. It showed me that grief isn't always loud. Sometimes grief is something you just have to live with.
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment?
This intro quote really sets the tone for the game. On hindsight, you can't really make out what the quote means, but after finishing the entire game, this is actually foreshadowing for the different endings of NieR. It shows the inevitability of loss and grief that comes along with it. This is evident with ending A and B, as 2B says this line.
It always ends like this.
It always ends like this. 2B knows. And when you play through all the endings of NieR, you would know that 2B is actually 2E. She was made to execute units like 9S every time they get too close to discovering the truth. And that's her grief. She wasn't given much of a choice, and she knows that. She will always be forced to kill her one and only partner that she cares for over and over and over again. And there's nothing she can do about it. She is forced to face her grief of losing 9S in every single cycle. This made me understand something about the grief we face in life. That a lot of the time, grief is something we carry. Throughout our lifespan, grief comes in one form or another. Whether that is a sudden loss of a loved one with extreme emotions and breakdowns, or a silent breakup as you watch your partner's feeling for you slowly fade, and all you can do is watch them drift further away from you as you feel the grief settle in. This feels similar to 2B's experience, where each time she has to watch 9S learn more about Yorha, she watches him drift further away, and all she can do is show up for him for the remainder time she has, until she is forced to kill him and restart the loop all over again. However, what hit me was how she handled through the same grief cycle 47 times. Each time, she suppresses more of her emotions, and she's seen as an emotionless and stoic person. But after a certain point, her suppressed emotions start to show up. The more she interacted with 9S, she starts growing closer to 9S again, and she starts letting her emotions flow. She became less emotionless. She became more human, more herself.
9S.
2B.
Come on. Let's go home.
And from 2B, I can kind of see a reflection of myself. Well, not the going through the cycle of grief 47 times, but rather the suppressing of emotion part. The trying to put up a front of, oh, I'm okay, and the, yeah, I'm fine. It gets tiring after a certain point. This type of grief isn't a type that collapses on you. Rather, it makes you collapse. It makes you lose yourself, like how 2B did. This isn't about 2B overcoming her grief, but rather how she carries it with her. And what I realized through 2B's story was how she kept moving forward. Even with the weight of the world on her shoulder, she still chose to show up for Nines. Even when the outcome is the same, she allowed herself to slowly feel her emotions again. And each time she loses Nines, she still appreciates and cherishes the time she spent with him. Here is a takeaway from her grief, that sometimes choosing to love is worth the pain. That's what makes us human. We still choose to love even knowing loss in one way or another is inevitable. That grief will always be here with us. But it's the silent one that teaches us how to handle ourselves with care. And some days just surviving is enough.
Everything that lives is designed to end.
When I first mentioned this intro, I said it was foreshadowing for the grief we will see in this game. But maybe the game was trying to tell us something different. Through 2B's story alone, it tells us that because things will always end, we should always cherish the time we have with each other more. And even if we do fall into grief, it too will end. But everyone learns to carry their grief in different ways. 2B in silence, while Nines does it in rage and regret. His grief is one of the most commonly seen and experienced by people, even though it is the most destructive one. This type of grief is just as valid as the silent ones. But because we tend to handle the loud grief wrongly, we only see the destructive nature of it. But looking at it deeper, it is, in most cases, the loss of someone of importance, but responded differently. Grief may be something that stays with us for a long period of our lifespan, until one day it just becomes a part of you. A teacher that taught you how to take care of yourself, that taught you self-love and care. And as the quote states, everything that lives is designed to end. This is a lesson from grief, that we should cherish the time we have and don't ever linger about the bad times, because even the darkest of nights will eventually end, and what follows will be the most beautiful sunrise.